Now, one thing to know about me is that I'm a breakfast burrito fiend.
Just took it to my veins!
I believe the ideal way to consume breakfast is in burrito form. Now, we've already covered a coveted breakfast burrito from my childhood, the McDonald's breakfast burrito. But today we're tackling the king of the breakfast burrito, the California style breakfast burrito. A thing that whenever I'm on the West Coast, I wake up and crave immediately. Something that has sort of all the things you expect from a breakfast burrito, but with secret little tricks that make them the best ones I've ever had. For example, some potato element is necessary. And one of the best I've had in LA is made with tater tots. And it's all wrapped up in a perfect homemade flour tortilla, which we must get started making now. Now, it's hard to find a burrito-sized tortilla suitable for a big burrito in stores these days, so I'm gonna show you a trick on how I make a big 16-inch, almost pizza-sized tortilla so we can get everything nicely filled in it. Now, at home, corn tortillas, a little tricky. I've had my own issues with them. Flour tortillas, on the other hand, very easy. It all gets done in a food processor, and it starts with 2 3/4 cups of flour, or about 360 grams. That goes straight into the food processor. And then here we have a 1/3 cup, or about 70 grams of lard. You could use bacon fat, shortening, whatever you got. We're gonna get that in there. We're gonna start this by just kind of pulsing that together, kind of like you would do a pie dough. Basically just working it all, getting all that lard incorporated throughout the flour. It should kind of compress when you press into it. Shows that the lard is nicely incorporated. Now here I've got about 3/4 of a cup of water, about roughly 160 grams, 65 grams, and I'm just warmed it up and dissolved about a pinch of salt into it. And I'm gonna turn this on and slowly add the water to the dough. Just about a minute or so, it should come together in a bit of a rough dough. And what you should have is this kind of warm ball of dough. Nice and hydrated. I'm just gonna knead it slightly. It's tacky, it's moist, but it's not sticky, it's not dry. That's perfect. Now, depending on the surface size of what you're gonna cook this on, the biggest, most probably available surface is the back of a cast iron or wok, kind of like a curved griddle. But I actually have a baking steel, the thing you keep in the oven. It's big, it's steel, it's square. It's meant to cook pizzas on, and we can simply just preheat the oven to around 500 degrees. We want the surface of the steel to be around 450 to 500, and we can roll a big tortilla out and cook it just like a pizza on the steel. To do that, we need about 4-ounce balls of the dough. Now, just like a pizza dough, we're gonna sort of smooth out the top and cinch the bottoms closed, and sort of with the sides of our hands round the dough into like a nice ball while cinching the bottom. Once you got a nice curved tall ball, you're gonna use the side of your palm, just gently flatten it out. Get it going once we start to roll it into its eventual shape. So we've got 5 tortillas. They're gonna be big burrito tortillas. We wanna let those rest for at least 30 minutes, nice and covered. Continue to hydrate and soften so they're nice and easy to roll out. Leave these out at room temp. Next up, we need a fire roasted salsa to go with. For that, I need about a half a white onion, depending on how spicy you like it, a couple jalapenos, some limes for some lime juice, some fresh cilantro. The secret to all salsas, of course, is a bouillon cube. And then our fire roasted element is going to be my favorite tomatoes for my Italian food, but they also make a fire roasted chopped tomato that makes an amazing, like, basic fire roasted red salsa. So we're gonna use the tomatoes for these later, but we need to char up some of these vegetables. Also some garlic. About 4 cloves of garlic, 5, whatever you want. We're gonna dry roast these, so I'm just gonna kind of keep them in their paper. It's gonna protect them a little bit. Need about half this onion. Cut that half in half. Cut them again into wedges, and then just get those in, toss them in. Some get a little bit more charred. I don't mind that. Just gonna add a little bit more, fill it out. Ratios for salsa, I go by eye. I know everyone wants recipes, but like onions are different sizes. Everything is variable. So ultimately, if you want to really be a good cook, you have to just learn to figure things out as you go. These are dry. I've got the oven preheated for the tortillas later. I'm gonna throw these on and just hit them with the broiler. So we're just gonna throw those under the broiler, and we're really just looking for blistering and charring on all of the vegetables. Obviously the garlic will burn quicker, so I'm just gonna move that to the cooler part of the oven, closer to the opening, and keep rotating everything until everything gets nicely charred on all sides. Still some uncooked bits in the center, but char around the outside. The papers of the garlic are burnt, but that protected the inside, and the jalapenos are nicely charred. So we can actually just start to throw in the onions. Need some gloves anyway for the jalapenos, so I'm just gonna tear open those papers and look, you got a beautifully roasted piece of garlic. Now, I'm just gonna remove most of the seeds. You can add as much or as little as you deem. Now, these are just kind of fillets floating in like a tomato water, so I wanna strain that water out, just get that pure tomato flavor. About 12 ounces of this. You can always add more later. Get those in there, a little cilantro, juice of a lime, and the bouillon cube. Let's give it a blitz. I'm gonna do a little bit more tomato. Also, I forgot a good amount of salt. See if that changes the color at all. So now it's a little thick. I'm just gonna add a little bit of that juice. More lime juice. Be nice and thick. Now we've got our salsa, which is beautiful for this burrito, but can be used in any sort of ways. So we're gonna let this sit, let the flavor develop in the fridge. Next up, some chipotle crema. I'm gonna get some sour cream in there. About a half cup to a cup. Then I've got some chipotle and adobo. And we're making a chipotle crema, so we need some of this. I'm gonna take about 2 of them. One, that's a big boy. And then just a little of that adobo. You could add more if you like it really smoky and spicy. A little lime juice and some salt. Now, this might be a little tougher to blend in this guy. Crema's ready. We're gonna let this sit in the fridge. Now, just a few more things to prep. You need 4 eggs, about $35 worth of eggs. We're just gonna crack them into the bowl. These are just prep them and scramble them a little bit later. Then we need some chives for a little flavor and color inside the burrito. Bunch them up, trim off the edge. Now you have a nice clean edge and slowly slice through the chives. Don't squash them and break them. By only pushing down, you're pushing forward and rocking. Perfect chopped chives. Now what I love about some of these burritos is the obvious Mexican influence, and one of the cheeses they use instead of like an American cheese that maybe in New York I'm used to in breakfast, we use something like a Oaxaca cheese. Not saying everyone would use this, but I've found it in a lot of places. It's a beautiful cheese in a breakfast burrito. It's got that like mozzarella type vibe. Really great melter. Now you see it comes like kind of wrapped up in this kind of ball or yawn of cheese, right? So much like mozzarella, you can just kind of tear it like string cheese. And that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna shred it as fine as I can, just so it melts quickly when we go and heat up the burrito. So now we've got our cheese element, and then we need our bacon. And you know, how annoying is bacon packaged? So it's easier to cook when it's cut in half anyway, and it's easier to get in the pack and to store the rest of it when you just cut it in half. And we just wanna cut it into thin slices, little strips like that. And then of course, we've got our tater tots. These are just run-of-the-mill, freezer aisle tater tots. You find the brand that you like best. You could also use those hash browns, get a nice thin layer of hash brown going and wrap that in the burrito. That's another option too. But the secret to a breakfast burrito is some kind of delicious potato. It's not the meat, it's not the bacon, it's not the cheese, it's the potato. Trust me. So now we're gonna take care of the bacon and the tater tots. So I've got some oil in a small pan and I'm gonna preheat that up to a frying temperature on medium-high heat. And then for my bacon, we're gonna start in a cold pan on high heat and we're immediately gonna get the bacon in. We're gonna allow it to start to render and get hot and then lower the heat down to a medium and just cook this, slowly rendering out the fat of the bacon, making sure that we render out all of that fat and achieve a nice golden brown bacon that's nicely crisp all the way through. About halfway through, once some of that fat starts rendering out, I like to sort of tilt the pan and gather all the bacon on one side to almost soak and fry in its own fat, almost like a confit. Keep them moving around, and then once you're seeing lots of little bubbles forming in the fat and the bacon is nicely brown, the fat is crisp, once it's at this stage, we want to get it out. I'm going to pour it into a little pan with a strainer, catch the fat underneath it so I can use it again later, and we've got our nice bacon strips. Keep this pan on the stove. We're going to use it for the eggs in a bit. Now our frying oil should be up to about at least 350, but I'm going a little higher, around 390, because these are frozen, so that frozen tater tot is going to drop the temperature of the oil immediately. And we just want to fry them for about 5 minutes, moving them around until they all get a nice golden brown. There's no real tricks here. It's pretty basic. We're just frying them like you would in a deep fryer. Once they're nice and golden and crispy, we're going to fish them out, let them drain on a paper towel, and we've got our crispy bacon and our crispy tater tots. Key elements to this breakfast burrito. So now we can deal with our tortillas. Got one of our flattened tortilla balls. I've got a rolling pin. So I'm gonna hit the flour on the board, flour on both sides. And here's what I'm gonna start to do. I'm gonna take my palm and my fingertip and my middle finger and sort of pinch the center. And as I'm working it around like this, I'm pinching the center and spreading it and pinching the top. So I'm just trying to spread the dough in a wider, more even circle. Now in the beginning, you want to do really small motions and turning regularly just to set and maintain a real circular shape. Doesn't really matter, but if you're looking to get a nice even circular shape, you kind of can't spread it too fast in the beginning. You're just taking your time. We're really trying to go as thin as we can. Now find me a tortilla this big in the store. Imperfect, but beautiful. So now our steel is ready to go. We just need to get this from here onto the steel, and then we're gonna cook our eggs. Hit them with some salt. Those are ready to go. I'll show you a little trick to launch this onto the baking steel. Just gonna roll it up like this. Then very carefully, we're gonna transfer it. Drop the tip down on that far side. Watch yourself. Be very careful. Drop the rolling pin onto the baking steel and just roll it. If you made your dough right, it should immediately start to create little bubbles on the surface. You see it cook right before your eyes in almost like 15 seconds. And we get our spatula and we start to kind of scoop under there, try and give it a nice flip. It is big, so it is a little tricky and it is delicate, but give it a flip, cook that other side, press on some of those little pale spots just to allow it to make contact, to cook through and to steam. We're really just trying to steam the inside of that. That's what a good tortilla is. Once it's browned on both sides, puffy and steaming, we're gonna get it off. You don't wanna cook it too long and dry it out. And while that tortilla cools, we can get the non-stick pan back on the heat, add a knob of butter to it, and then we can add in our scrambled eggs. We're gonna let it cook on about a medium heat for about 20 seconds without touching it, and then we're just gonna use a spatula and start to push from the edge of the pan into the center, sort of scrunching up all of that cooked egg, allowing all the egg yolk to run around it and finish cooking. And we're just gonna repeat that until most of the pan clears up. At that point, we're gonna turn the heat off. We're gonna add a knob of butter to it and just sort of fold that butter and glaze that egg and allow the residual heat in the pan to finish cooking through the egg so that it's nice and custardy. We want it to kind of hold up inside of the burrito and not be too loose. Then I just sort of kind of cradle it into the corner, shape it a little better so that it'll fit in the burrito, and now we're ready to assemble. First, we go down with a layer of the cheese. Make it thin so it's easier to melt, not piled up. We're gonna go in with the bacon, then with our eggs. Nice custardy, fluffy eggs. Then we're gonna go with the crema, the chive, a little slice of pickled jalapeno, and then the tater tots. I'm just gonna cut a quarter of an avocado. Now burritos are usually hard to roll because the tortillas are small, but we've got a nice big one. And to do this right, we're gonna take the sides and fold them into the burrito and then fold that back end closest to you over it. Now keep scrunching in, folding over any loose ends, and then just keep rolling until it's nice and tight. Now, we're just gonna seal it up in a pan, get it nice and hot with a little bit of butter. We should be ready to go. While that heats up, we can prep our plate. A little bit of our salsa right into a little ramekin. Highly inspired by Great White in Venice. Once that butter is hot, we're gonna place the burrito seam side down with the intent to try and seal it shut. Let it cook there, let it brown on that first side, and then you're gonna give it a rotate, brown the other side. Cook it at a low enough heat that it doesn't brown too much before that cheese can melt, and just keep rotating it, browning all sides until it's nice and crispy and that cheese inside is nice and melty. Then we can transfer it to the board, cut it in half, and marvel in the beautiful, perfect breakfast burrito that you just made. No trip to California. You're making this in your home whenever you crave it. We ain't gonna beat that, folks. Mexican breakfast is the GOAT. The salsa, the avocado, the chipotle, all those flavors mixed with the texture of the potato, the bacon, that cheesy pull of Oaxaca cheese. It just can't be beat. Now, I know I'm not the only breakfast burrito fiend out there. And when I want a good one, I gotta fly all the way to the West Coast. No more. If you're like me and you want one of these regularly, link's gonna be down in the description. That's all that I have today. I'll see you next time. Until then, take care of yourself and go feed yourself.